Fellas, since Leon Edwards got announced against Belal Muhammad for the main event of UFC 304 last week, I thought it'd be a good time to talk about Leon Edwards, and specifically the most difficult fights for Leon Edwards out of everyone in the UFC. So the 5 most difficult fights for Leon Edwards in the UFC right now. Now, I'm not saying these 5 guys definitely beat Leon Edwards. I'm not saying they're guaranteed going to beat him. I'm just saying compared to the rest of the roster, these 5 guys would give Leon Edwards the most difficult test and potentially take the belt away from him. So let me know your thoughts on this list and if you disagree with anything or, change the placements. But we'll go in there with the first fighter, and it is Garry. Now, the reason I've chosen Garry, the main reason I've chosen Garry is because it's a completely fresh new style to Leon Edwards. Now, we see Leon Edwards and who he's been fighting recently, Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, guys who don't really have the highest level of striking, and their main game plan is to use their striking, if they've got any decent striking, to take you down. Whereas Garry, he don't care about taking you down. He wants to beat you on the feet. He's a great technical striker, is Garry, and as he's shown in recent fights, he hasn't beaten an extremely high level opponent yet. He's got good wins over guys like D-Rod, Neil Magny, Jeff Neal, but I need to see Garry beat a guy like Covington before I say that he actually beats Leon Edwards. But because he's a completely new style to what Edwards is recently used to, I think he's a difficult guy, and everyone's going to say that Leon Edwards is well-rounded, and don't get me wrong, he is, but I don't think that's going to change anything in the fight, considering Garry also has really good takedown defense. Granted, he hasn't fought a top grappler yet, but I think overall, because Garry is a technical striker, and it would be a fight on the feet, and it's a completely new style to what Leon Edwards is used to recently, and that Garry is definitely one of the best strikers in the welterweight division. I've got to say that Garry makes the list. I'm putting him at number 5. Maybe if we see him beat a guy like Colby or something like that, then I might be able to put him higher. But as of right now, Garry, he's shown me that he's a great striker, and because of that, I'll put Garry at number 5. And then at the number 4 spot is a fight that actually could have happened for the main event of UFC 300. And if you don't know who I'm talking about pound for pound number 1, the best fighter in the UFC, Islam Makhachev versus Leon Edwards. I mean, this is a super fight. This is a massive fight. But yeah, Islam Makhachev is going to go at number 4. Now, I did a video not too long ago. I basically said the 5 biggest threats to Makhachev, and Leon Edwards was actually quite high on that list. So I don't think Makhachev would necessarily beat Leon Edwards, but I've still got to add him in this list. He's a difficult fight for Edwards. He's a difficult fight for anyone, man. It's Islam Makhachev. The dude is probably one of them. Well, yeah, he's definitely one of the most well-rounded fighters in the UFC. The dude has knocked out Alexander Volkanovski, gone to a decision with him, submitted Charles Oliveira. I understand his resume might not be that long right now, but this dude is beating some of the highest level opposition and dominated them as well. So Islam Makhachev, he's a difficult fight for anyone, man. And for Leon Edwards versus Makhachev, you look at the guys that Edwards has been beating recently, Colby, Kamaru Usman. I feel like on the feet, Leon Edwards kind of has a safety net. There's not really a big threat on the feet against Colby. It's kind of just, can you defend their takedowns? Whereas Makhachev, he ain't even safe on the feet, because as we've seen, Makhachev is a dangerous striker. He's the best wrestler in the UFC. His submissions are amazing. Makhachev is dangerous every single place the fight goes. So Leon Edwards is going to have to be working the entire time. He can't just leg kick Makhachev to a decision. He's going to have to really graft to get this win. So I've put Makhachev at number 4. I think it'll be a super competitive and close fight. I probably would edge it towards Leon Edwards to get the win, but with that being said, it's still a really difficult fight, because at the end of the day, it's pound for pound number 1, Islam Makhachev, who has looked great, and he seems like he's improving in every single fight. So Islam Makhachev, I'll give him the number 4 spot. I think he's going to give Leon Edwards a real big run for his money. And then at number 3, it is the guy who is going to be facing at UFC 304, Belal, remember the name, Muhammad. Now, I see Belal Muhammad as like a more dangerous version of Colby Covington, just a better version of Colby Covington, because Covington, he's meant to be a pressure wrestler, but we didn't see that against Leon Edwards. Belal Muhammad, he is going to pressure Leon Edwards. Belal Muhammad has shown that he likes putting on the pressure, and he will pressure Leon Edwards, and that's that's what Leon Edwards is notoriously known for struggling with. It's pressure. The second reason, Belal Muhammad is a much better striker than Colby Covington. Colby Covington don't want to strike. He wants to take you down. Colby Covington wants to spend the least amount of time striking with you as possible. Belal Muhammad, he don't care. He will strike with you if he has to. He was able to finish Sean Brady with striking. We saw in that fight against Gilbert Burns, the majority of the fight was actually striking. So Belal Muhammad, I'm not saying he's a high level striker like a guy like Garry is. but he ain't afraid of striking. You know, if he has to strike, he will. So he's got that over Colby Covington, and I just feel like overall he's just a more dangerous guy. Like, look at the people Belal Muhammad has fought. He has fought strikers in Stephen Thompson and Vicente Luque. He has fought grapplers in Sean Brady and Gilbert Burns, and he has done the same thing to all of them. Have a boring fight and beat all of them. And I feel like even though Leon Edwards is definitely the best on that list, and we can compare the first fight that they had and say that Edwards looked amazing in that first fight, without a doubt you've got to include Makhachev in this list, man. You've got to include, not Makhachev, Belal Muhammad in this list, man. He's a dangerous fight. Not dangerous in the sense that he might finish him, but dangerous in the sense that he's a big problem stylistically. I think he's going to put the pressure on Leon Edwards, and I think he's going to try and mix it up with his striking. Even though if I had to bet money, I would bet money on Islam. Why do I keep talking about Islam? I would bet money on Leon Edwards winning this fight. We've got to include Makhachev. Why are we still talking about Makhachev? We've got to include Belal Muhammad at number 3. So Belal Muhammad, number 3, most difficult fight for Leon Edwards. I don't know why I keep bringing up Makhachev again. He's number 4. Number 2 for the most difficult fight for Leon Edwards in the UFC is a guy who most people would probably put at that number 1 spot, and it is Shavkat Rakhmonov. Yeah, I've got to put Shavkat on this list. I mean, first of all, the dude is 18-0, and he's finished every single fighter he has ever stepped in there with, whether it be in the UFC, outside the UFC. This dude has finished everyone. I mean, that alone shows you the type of guy this is. He's brutal. He ain't there to play games. He's there to get the finish, unlike Belal Muhammad. This dude will do everything it takes to win. 18-0, finished everyone. And then you look at the people he's beaten, like similar to, what's his name, Ian Garry. He hasn't got a win over like a high-level opponent yet. He's got wins over Jeff Neal and Stephen Thompson. But it's the way that he beat those guys that makes me really kind of optimistic about him beating Leon Edwards, because this dude, unlike Colby and Usman, he might not be as good as a wrestler as those guys are, but his submission game is amazing, and he's so good at mixing it up with his striking, with his submissions. He's got dangerous striking as well. He's so crafty on the feet, and he's always going to try and look for that submission. He beats everyone. It's kind of like he's like a nightmare matchup for every single guy he goes against, and it would be a super dangerous matchup for Leon Edwards because of the fact that he can finish you at any time. The dude's got striking. Not saying he's a better striker than Leon Edwards, but he's got a decent level of striking, and he has that big submission threat that most welterweights just can't seem to get away from when they're fighting Shavkat. So Shavkat's getting that number 2 spot. Leon could definitely get the win. I think his head movement is Shavkat's head movement is something that lets him down. Leon could piece him up on the feet, but I think because Shavkat is just a completely different guy to what Leon's been facing. We saw him against Stephen Thompson, and I know Stephen Thompson's takedown defense ain't great, but we saw what he did to Stephen Thompson. We saw what he did to Jeff Neal. He is a brutal killer, is Shavkat Rakhmonov, and he is going to make Leon Edwards have to be perfect for the full 25 minutes of that fight. So I'm putting Shavkat Rakhmonov at number 2, and if you're wondering why I've not put him at number 1, it's because the number 1, you know, that belongs to the real most dangerous guy for Leon Edwards, Mr. Jack Della Maddalena. Jack Della Maddalena is by far, in my opinion, the most dangerous fight for Leon Edwards out of every single ranked opponent in the UFC. I'd go as far to say that Jack Della Maddalena would be Leon Edwards' biggest test when it comes to striking out of every single fighter Leon Edwards has ever faced. Jack Della Maddalena's striking is so good. He is, in my opinion, the best boxer in the welterweight division. His combinations that he showed against Kevin Holland, the power, the danger factor of JDM. This dude is so dangerous on the feet, and I think him versus Leon Edwards would be so fun to watch on the feet. And I know there's going to be people in the comments, oh, Leon Edwards is well-rounded. Bro, so is JDM. Look at the Gilbert Burns fight. This dude was tripping Gilbert Burns. His submission defense in that fight was great. You don't want to look at the Burns fight. Look before that. The submissions this guy was getting. He's got great jiu-jitsu. JDM, I think he's more dangerous than Leon Edwards. I think his boxing's better than Leon Edwards. And I think unless Leon Edwards comes out with a masterclass, I think JDM could actually take it against Leon Edwards. And we do need to see JDM in about one more fight before he gets a title shot. He's beating Gilbert Burns. He's beating Kevin Holland. He's got some decent wins already. But we need to see him against a top-level opponent before we put him in there with Leon. But I'm going JDM number 1. That is my top 5 for the most dangerous fights for Leon Edwards in the UFC. Let me know if you agree with this list or if you would have added anyone else. But yeah, that's my list. Thank you for watching.